179 people are watching us. We are
Oh my
live.
God, I had no clue.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Innes College, so much for showing Funny Boy and for inviting us. Thank you, Francisca, and for your patience. And thank you for not throwing a fit about my techno nerdishness. But most of all, thank you, Anne Marie. Anne Marie is a person I admire hugely. Her works have um, inspired me, touched me, made me think because they're about subjects that I really care about. Self determination is what makes you so special, and I'm so pleased that
Well,
you've agreed to have this conversation with me.
me too, Deepa. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk with you. Um, you know, I've watched Funny Boy twice, and I've laughed in all the same places. I cried in all the same places. And to me, that's if I watch a play that I've written and I
Mm-hmm.
listen to the audience, and if I know that by and large they're having the same sorts of experiences, then I know that I've succeeded. And I know that each audience is getting that show, is getting what I meant. And if anything, the second viewing was even more rewarding and more emotional for me. So
Mm-hmm.
you talk about self-determination, and I also see an extraordinary love story, which is part and parcel of self-determination, because little Archie is already from the very beginning, he's marked out, and he has no idea how tough it's going to get. And then you've got this love story and this quest for personal self-determination in the context of a revolution, of a civil war, that's going to go on for years and years and years and years, among people who share so much, but who have such differences, but in and of themselves are so incredibly diverse. The Sinhalese community is anything but a monolith. Same with the Tamil community, and there's like four major religions that they share, and the languages go back and forth, and through for a typical possibly North American, I see things through a North American lens. You really opened my eyes to the extraordinary cultural diversity that is also Sri Lanka. And to achieve that epic scope in a story that was so personal that I felt I was right there at the table when the family is having a meal together and no one can eat because no one can really deal with the fact that RG is gay. So I mean, the really dumb lunkheaded question is, oh my God, how did you do that? Um, but I would love to hear you speak a little bit about, let's just begin with the casting, because you needed to make a family.
I think I'd like to take a step back because, and what why did I want to make this film is actually the main question for me. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, in a way, what you asked is that whether it's from young RG to the Civil War. Uh, there's my hero is Louis Buñuel. I've loved all his films all my life, and he had a lovely thing that he said, which was, the minute you're particular is the minute you become universal.
Yeah.
So, like you said, little RG is already marked, and because he's a funny boy, there's no room for self-determination. And similarly, on a larger scale, the Tamils are already marked because there's no room for them for self-determination unless they fight for it. I mean, so for me, from the personal to the universal was linked. The personal was the story of RG, and the universal was the story of what happened in this devastating civil war and genocide of the Tamils. So for them to come together was like when I read the book has been around for 22 years.
Why did it take so long for it to be able to come to the screen?
Sham, who is lovely, he's just so talented and such a lovely guy, and we worked together. I think people optioned the book. I mean, I remember when it came out 22 years ago, I immediately rang up his agent or something and said, "I'd love to. Can I please have the rights for it?" And they were already gone to somebody in England. I think they went to Gurinder Chadda maybe, and and then I just forgot about it. And I did a play about an excerpt for a radio play on excerpt of Funny Boy about 15 years ago, and then I moved on. I did Fire and Earth, and but 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when Sham came to me, uh, and he said he'd written the script himself because people had optioned it off and on for 22 years. But I think it was really sad for him that no Tamil had ever optioned it. And the industry in Sri Lanka is really, I mean, it's really booming and it does really well. And so he wrote the script himself because nobody would write it. And
And is it because, I mean, homosexuality, it's still illegal to be
yes,
gay
I think
in Sri
I don't know
Lanka?
what
So
the
does that,
reasons are didn't option it, but I mean, as a Tamil Sinhalese, his mother is Sinhalese, and his father is Tamil. So for him, the book was actually he wouldn't have minded anybody doing it because for him, the book is about Sri Lankans.
Mhm.
And of course, I mean, if we have to do, I remember doing my film Earth, which is about the sectarian war between the Muslims and Sikhs
Yeah.
when the Brits divided India into India and Pakistan. It was uh, it was horrific. It was very difficult to get Pakistani actors. I mean, I remember going to Pakistan, but they were afraid of coming to India to shoot there, and we said, okay, we'll shoot in Lahore. And I remember going to Lahore, and this is a long time ago, but things don't change really. And I
No.
remember going to Lahore and trying to find some Indian actors who would come to Lahore, but they were scared of coming to Lahore. So when the line is divided and there's a sectarian war, I think people just become really who are on the ground. I'm not talking about the ones who are outside, the
Mhm.
diaspora. I'm talking about the people who are on the ground,
It,
whether
it,
it,
yeah.
it, it becomes
Takes a very, very, very long time, that kind of sectarian strife and violence. I mean, that rips families apart. That goes so
exactly.
deep, and that takes a very, very long time for those embers to cool.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so that said, you had a brilliant cast. Was it tough to find people?
It was, oh my God, it was really tough. But I think we did well at the end. I mean, being sort of a purist, and all my films have been about let's be authentic. I mean, I don't want somebody who's not authentic to play a certain role, whether it's a Pakistani or an Indian or a Hindu or a Muslim or whatever. Uh, but Shah was very helpful, the writer. He ran the Gaul Film Festival, the
Mm.
literary festival, and introduced me to a lot of people. So we did the casting in Canada because it is a Canadian book and it's a Canadian film, and I looked for actors here, Sinhalese actors, Sri Lankan actors, Tamil actors, Indian actors, Pakistani actors. I mean, it was quite the thing, and then started looking for Tamil actors because I found two wonderful ones in Toronto actually, but they couldn't do it at the last minute. One had a father's operation, and the other was a refugee, so he couldn't go back to Sri Lanka to shoot.
Right.
They're real problems, and we
Yeah.
looked at some in the United States and London, and then we found them. We found most of them in Sri Lanka, and
Uh,
we found three major ones here,
and
and
how was it shooting in Sri Lanka? What was
it
it
was
like to be there and shoot
fantastic.
this
I
story?
love it. I mean, I shot water there because we
Yeah.
weren't allowed to shoot water in India.
Mm.
So I'd been there. I'd shot Midnight's Children there as well. So I
Mm.
knew the country really well, and I was lucky because I had access to casting agents and production designers, and it was really marvelous. And the
Can,
actors, yeah.
can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to collaborate with the author? Because
Huh.
you collaborated on the screenplay, right? He had written one before. How much did you have to change? And basically, I'm always curious because I'm an author. I write
And
books,
no, you've written a
and
screenplay
and I'm
that I
talking to
love,
one
and
of the
I
most
want to direct Anne Marie.
and I can think of somebody who I'm talking to right now who would make an amazing director for an adaptation of my book. Um, but I always think of it in the following way that for a book to become a film, it needs to die to one genre and be reborn in another, or die to one medium and be reborn in another. And that's what makes a success. It's like a really brilliant translation, right? It's you
Mhm.
can't simply transliterate. So that said, there are inevitably going to feel as though there are sacrifices that perhaps you make. You say, well, we can't put that's beautiful in the book, can't actually handle that in the film. And so, was there anything you had to sacrifice in that way?
I don't think we had to sacrifice anything. I
Mm.
mean, Sham wrote the first draft of the screenplay, which is the one he brought to me, and which is about 148 pages long, which was a bit too long for a feature film. But he himself had, before he'd given it to me, had made eliminations of certain incidents and certain characters. And when we sat down, because I knew the book really well, and I said, "Why did you choose this, or why did you choose to discard this?" And he told me because it didn't fit in, because he wanted to go from, again, from the particular to the universal, and he wanted to really focus on what it was like, because he himself was a refugee with his family who left Sri Lanka when he was 18, and he was gay, and his family was half Sinhalese and half Tamil, and they landed in Toronto. I mean, so he had made the choices already of what had to be eliminated, and it made sense to me. I
Mm-hmm.
think
Mm-hmm.
where I took it was totally to a cinematic level, which was cut down a lot of the dialogue and show instead of tell.
Yeah,
And
well, that's beautiful cinematic storytelling, right?
yeah,
That's the film art. That's what you
yeah,
do. That's what
I
you do so
think,
beautifully. And there was something that really struck me. One of the many things that really struck me was your choice to trade out young RG for older RG and vice versa. I thought that worked beautifully. And I wondered how you came to that, because I can't imagine that wouldn't have been part of the book. That
no,
had
it
to
wasn't
be.
a part of the book, and it wasn't a part of the screenplay either. In
Oh,
screenplay, we had, young RG is doing something, and then we cut to an older RG, and we have a flashback. When we arrived on set, in fact, the first time we did it, we were going to just cut and carry on, and then later do a flashback, the way cinema is usually done with the young RG. And I thought, no, this is something really wrong with this. I mean, it's not about a flashback. It has to be something that ties young RG to the older RG immediately, and then it's gone. Because I feel that who we are as young people inform who we are as adults. So whatever little RG is going through, and he says, "What does funny mean?" and his father says, "You'll be a bad man." And then we shift back and we expect to see little RG saying, trying to figure out what a bad man is. But actually, it's the older RG
yeah.
who's thinking about what it was like when he was told he was a bad man.
It's so
So,
poignant. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, and it's also so endearing all at the same time. And that's another thing. There is such tenderness and sweetness in a film which is set in a context where there is I mean, there's the political exile, there's the cultural exile, and there's also the exile that RG courts from his family
yeah.
simply for being who he is. And I mean, I can relate to that very strongly.
I know,
Um,
I'm sure.
yeah. So that, but that absolute sweetness of the first love, and well, that brings me to one of my favorite scenes is when the boys are dancing. There's a lovely aerial shot, and they're like, I guess what are they in their jockey shorts or whatever, and then and they're dancing, and then just just when you think you've already heard the Sting song, Every Breath You Take. We've heard them sing it off key a cappella to each other. We've heard them hum it. We've heard it kind of scratchy through the headphones. And then there it is. And they're singing to it and they're dancing. And I go, I'm in a great love story. So sweet. And then bang, we're into you've got to go home. You've
Yeah.
got to go home because
That was,
the
I
world
mean,
is ending.
it's interesting because Brandon Ingram, who is Sri Lankan, a burger, the way Michael Ondaatje is, and
Mm-hmm.
a proud Sri Lankan, is one of the few actors who I know and who came out as a gay young man. And that was amazing. And I think that was something that Sham wanted more than anything. It was important for him, and I thought it was important. Representation at all, especially now, is really important. But this aspect was extremely important for him, and it was difficult to find somebody who was the right person to play it,
Hmm.
who was Sri Lankan, who was Tamil, and who was. But he just blew me away
Yeah.
because he was an amazing actor. I mean, that's the main thing about a performance. I think I said this to you, and I'm getting tired of saying it, but Brecht said that, art is not a mirror that reflects reality, but a hammer that shapes it.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I would love the film to be completely authentic, etc., etc. But why do we do what we do? Because we can actually explore areas that we don't know much
Well,
about.
exactly, and that's where the truth.
That's
That's where
where
the
the
truth
truth
is
lies.
found. Oh, and here's another thing, which this is how did you choose when to switch back and forth between English and Tamil? Because I found it was absolutely seamless, and after a while, I stopped noticing whether or not I was reading subtitles or whether I was just understanding what they were saying. That too made me feel like I was right there with all of them. But how
Well,
did you make that?
I
How
wish,
did you
I wish
decide?
you'd been there, the Oscar selection, who turned us down because they felt that there was not enough Tamil in it.
Well,
But
that's
I
right.
mean, what do you do about rules? But that was also instinctive. I mean, I really felt that because I'm in the, I'm an Indo-Canadian, and when I go home to to Delhi to visit my parents and my family, or I come back here, I always switch from Hindi to English. Leaves you met David. He leaves him totally bewildered. He just can't get over the fact the way we switch from Hindi to English all the time. It
Yeah.
has a lot to do with the fact that the colonial thing and
Yes.
the education, but also hanging on to our roots. So I just felt that instinctively I'd say, okay, here and here and here, that I think they should speak Tamil. And Sham was really good about that and got the three Indian actors tutor. I mean, an amazing young, not, I mean, Charan is brilliant. He's a poet and a poet laureate in Tamil. And he worked with the Indian actors and to get their Tamil right. Uh, but it was so important that it felt that was more authentic than the pronunciation, which was quite dodgy at times, I have to say.
Well,
But
we do our
what
best.
the hell?
Do your
You know,
best,
yeah,
right?
you do your best. You can
Yeah.
only do your best.
Yeah. Well, I just loved it. It just felt like it flowed, and it really made me feel like I was included in some strange way. I was invited to switch back and forth as well. Somehow I can't even. I could probably write about it, but it just made me feel like
Mm.
I was intimately engaged. That switching back and forth.
Wonderful. That's so nice, Anne Marie, because
Yeah.
I mean, why do we make films? I mean, we want to invite people and explore. I mean, why did I want to make this? I said self determination really engages me, curiosity really engages me. Though I had done Water and Midnight's Children, we shot it in Sri Lanka, I hadn't done a Sri Lankan film. And what happened with the Tamils and what happened with the genocide was was something that I really wanted to explore. And because on a certain level, I mean, that's all of us. I want to, whether it's what happens in Quebec and Canada, or what happens in Rwanda, or what happens in India, it's
Ireland.
happening all over the world, or what
Yeah.
happened in the United States on the
Yeah.
6th of January. It's why do it's a search, a quest for humanity,
Mm.
perhaps to engage, and for you to hear you say that you were in that world is exactly why I made the film.
Mm.
To invite people who don't know anything about it to
That's it.
realize that, my God, they went through such hell. And if
Yeah.
they see a Sri Lankan or meet a Sri Lankan Tamil on the streets in Scarborough, they'll say, I know you. I know what happened to you.
Yeah.
How do you build empathy,
Exactly.
humanity for people? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
idea.
Precisely. That makes me think of Radha Auntie.
Oh, you love Radha Aunty, don't
Yeah, I
you?
love Radha Aunty too. I want you to make a movie about Radha Auntie's life after she marries and leaves. And oh, that reminds me. Now, okay, so the Leonard Cohen, I thought that was perfect too. And how did you come to that? Was that involved with the book, or is that just something?
No, there was no music was not involved with the book at
Mhm.
all. But I just thought, that then it's like cinematic talk, as you say, where you say, how do you project a period? I mean, I think of Radha Auntie. She went to UFT and probably to Innis College. I'm sure Charlie wants to hear that, but I'm sure she did. I wanted her to, and there she was. So what time period is it? And I listened to all the songs, and of course, she had to be listening to Let It Go, and she was too
Yeah,
cool not to.
yeah.
So,
And then of course Shehan knows it, knows
of
the song
course,
too.
Shehan knows
We've got
everything.
that. Yeah, of course he knows everything. I love it when he says we're normal.
I
Oh,
know.
it broke my heart. I loved that. Anyway, so Radha Auntie, and she goes and she has to get married, which is another kind of exile, which is that, you know, because she's a prisoner of her tradition and her
Mm,
religion, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but the whole scene where they're in the plane and you can see the lights of Pearson and Toronto through that winter sky. I was in tears just looking out the window with them. And then the poignancy of seeing their feet in flip-flops and little tiny little running shoes in the snow. And that moves me for a whole lot of reasons. I
mhm.
mean, one of which is it actually makes me think of my own grandparents, but it just makes me think about where people are coming from when they come here. And for me, that's also very caught up with who was here long before any of us started coming here.
No, yeah.
And stories of exile and determination and trying to live together and trying to be part of something which is our country, which is so incredibly various.
And diverse,
And
yeah.
to have the shot of those feet in the snow at Pearson, I thought there was such love there. And I thought, I don't want to get too mushy patriotic, but it made me as a Canadian just weep at how hard it is, at how hard it can be. And
Yeah.
just the fact that I feel honored when people come here. Like that's what
Yeah,
I
and they
thought.
do because I mean, and there's one line that I wrote that isn't written by Sham, and which I had to write, and I think it has a lot to do, Anne Marie, with my own immigrant experience. Is when Amma, the mother, sits in the car and she says, and they're saying, why doesn't he come in? And and she says he can do anything he wants to now. In the new world, we are all free slaves. And Sham said, why do you want to do that? And I said, because that's the way it is. Because we will be for generations slaves to what? Slaves to preconceptions
Yeah.
about us. I'm a certain color. I
Yep.
talk with a certain accent. Will I ever be? I mean, and I think that is what takes time.
Yeah.
Till that happens, we want to hang on to what defines us, in fact,
Yeah.
in a certain way. So where does diversity end and where does amalgamation begin?
Yeah.
That is the heart of Canada.
It
And
is the heart, and I feel like it begins when there's an embrace.
yes, there is. And
That's
it takes
it
time.
has
But
to start there.
I'm a proud Indo-Canadian. I really am. I mean, there's much I feel. I mean, I feel very strongly that if India and now Sri Lanka has given me its stories, then Canada has given me the freedom to express them,
Wow.
and that's, without that, we would be nowhere, right?
There it is. Well, on a different note, um, I was also blown away just by the music.
My God,
And
we
then I
got so
noticed in the credits,
lucky.
you're working with the legendary Howard Shore. It was amazing.
That was, I mean, we really, there were so many things that we got really lucky with this film. I mean, first of all, Sham's book, and then secondly, I think the cast is beautiful. Appa, Amma, Sri Lankan, Sinhalese, Burger, Pakistani, Indian, Canadian. I mean, it became an ode to Southeast Asia, I feel.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
that was important. And the editor, I mean, Teresa Font, we got so lucky with. I wanted The only person I really wanted to cut the film was Teresa, and she's a Spanish editor. Because she'd done Almodovar's, which I'd seen and swooned over like an idiot, film, A Pain and Glory.
Mhm.
I said, the only person I want is, I
Well,
threw
that's
away.
funny because I mean, I don't usually comb the credits, wondering, oh, who edited that? I have to know who, but I did this time.
Oh, that's so nice because,
That's funny, eh?
Doug Coe shot the film that you actually worked on.
Yeah,
You
that's right.
shot
And it was
I Heard the Mermaids, right?
that's right. And he is, I mean, it's so gorgeous. It's lush. And anyway, I don't have the cinematographic lingo, but that was another name that I looked for. I thought, who shot this? Come on, who
Oh,
did
no, I
this?
mean,
Is incredible. And it was Doug Coe, with
I
whom I
mean,
worked. I think that was his first feature and my first feature, but we're going way back.
I mean, I think that if we have to do Fall on Your Knees, I think Doug will have to shoot it, Anne Marie.
Okay, I think, and I wonder, you see, how many, we got 179 people. This, yeah, okay, good. You heard it here. You can tell Doug.
I can't even make out how to see anything, but I just forgot that you even, that's so nice that
I know,
people
isn't that the
actually
funny thing
tuned
about
in.
Zoom?
Yeah. No, I will tell Doug that. I will tell Doug that. He'll be so thrilled. I
Please
mean,
do.
he's such a foodie. I think when he wasn't behind the camera and getting going, absolutely, because we shot the film mostly without lights. I wanted no
Whoa.
lights. I wanted 8 hour days, and I wanted all the focus to be on the performances. And I
Mhm.
said the camera has to be motivated by the actors, not the other way around. So
Yeah.
there were no marks that any actor ever had to hit. When they'd rehearse a scene,
Oh,
we'd,
that's amazing.
the camera would follow them. It wasn't the other way around.
Oh, that's very
And
cool.
he was wonderful. He just went for it. And, that takes a lot of courage, and he just did it. Yeah.
That must have been so much. Actually, I know that all the high risk and the challenges and everything, but it must have been so much fun to shoot that film.
We had a lovely shoot.
Yeah.
We did, I mean, before we shoot, I do a workshop for about like, a week or 10 days with the actors, which is not about the script, but it's about characters.
Hmm.
And that itself, and at the end, the last 3 days, I invite the cinematographer and the first assistant director, and even the producer, and to come and join us in the exercises we do in the workshop. So
Hmm.
by the time the actors come on set, they actually know who's behind the camera.
Yeah.
And Doug knew all the actors by their name, not just because, but also knew their characters.
Well,
We,
that's got to have something to do with why I felt like I was really in their house and I'm really with this family. I'm really with these people. You know, that's got everything to do with it.
when you think of Appa, played by Ali Kazmi, I mean, he lives right here in Leslieville or something. I mean, he's just brilliant. And
That's
Agam, I mean, there's Agam who lives in Vancouver. I mean, she's a Sikh Canadian born in England who plays your favorite Auntie Radha.
Auntie, Radha Auntie,
Radha
Radha Auntie.
Auntie,
I
Radha
know, and
Auntie.
children. I mean,
And the kids were
the
wonderful.
performances of the kids were fantastic.
Avi is, I mean, it's interesting. His father is a wonderful Tamil actor in Sri Lanka, and he himself is Tamil. And it was, at the last minute, I asked his dad. I said, will you play Anil's father? And he said, sure. And I said, you have no problems in playing a Sinhalese because he's Tamil. And he said, no, I'm dying to play a Sinhalese. So I mean, everybody was. We were together as a family. Nimi, who was brilliant as Amma, it was so. She's
Yeah,
Tamil, half Sinhalese, like Sham.
she she did a great performance.
I mean, because
It
the
was
film
exquisite.
is about, in many ways, is also about a woman who's a housewife, an upper middle class housewife who discovers politics, discovers herself
Yeah,
through politics. And that was really important as
yeah,
well, because, what are films without women? Nothing, I think.
exactly, exactly. Um, well,
I think we're done, aren't
have
we?
we? I think we've got like 2 more minutes. Is there anything you wanted to talk about or add, Deepa?
I don't know. I'm so touched that you like the film so
Oh, I
much. That
loved it.
means a lot.
I love the
Because
film.
you make the film and you want it to be the people who see it, uh, respond to it, people who don't know anything about what happened
Hmm.
onto it. And, I remember when I did water, and this is the last thing I'm going to say because it's so funny because I remember doing a talk, I don't know where, but it was. And after the film, and they said, we really didn't know that there were widows in India and what happens. And, this is what they had to do. And there were child widows. And how do we find out more? And I said, Google it. So I feel that, when people talk to me, and so many people have,
Yeah.
we want to know what happened in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
I said, well, Google it. And
Yeah.
that's, I mean, I don't want, you don't do a film to educate people, but you do a film to arouse their curiosity,
Yeah.
maybe, the way the book aroused mine.
That's right.
And
Well, I think
and
we
here we
could
are.
we could go on. We
I
could.
know, I know.
I know I
I
could.
think in this,
But I just see.
Gandhi
Oh,
and
Charlie's
English will
popping in.
kick us out. Yeah.
Here's Charlie.
Oh, if only you would. A delightful conversation, so engaged and affectionate. It was just wonderful to sort of soak it in. Deepa, the one thing I was struck by, and of course it's present in some of your other films, but having seen the Little America episode and then this
Oh,
in fairly
yeah.
close
Yeah.
proximity, it's your sensitivity to the sort of the wonders of childhood that
Mhm.
bring out in such a palpable fashion. And it's really quite remarkable because not all directors have that ability to use child actors and then but also to create the right atmosphere around them so as to convey
Yeah. No, thank you. I mean, I love working with kids. I mean, people have a tough time, but I never tell them, and they never ask me, thank God, what's my motivation, because that would be dreadful. But that's why it's so great to work with kids. I just have to tell them what makes you happy, and they'll tell me, oh, playing baseball makes me happy, or like the kid in the manager in the Little America series. I mean, he just loved. He absolutely thought that the sun rose and with Brad Pitt for some reason. Who knows? Whenever he had to be happy, he said, okay, I have. There was no point in saying, can you please be happy? And but if I said to him, can you imagine, Ishan, that Brad Pitt is coming to have tea with you? He just beam. So what it is really is getting to know the kids. What makes them sad? What makes them happy? Very, you know, basic emotions, and that's what they respond to. It's not you don't sit and talk to them about why psychological things about why they feel a certain way. I mean, the kids are.
I I loved how angry Diggy got
I know.
while playing cricket with his useless brother.
I know. It was really funny. Abhi was
He was
amazing.
furious. It was great. And the sister, anyway, I won't go on. But yeah, the kids, they turned in such impassioned performances and delightful.
No, they were just, I love working with them because, like I said, it's just, you don't have to have conversations about motivation. I mean, which is a dreadful thing for a director to hear in the middle of a scene. What's my motivation? But none of these actors were like that. So we had become, I feel with Funny Boy, it was truly what a film should be, which is a totally collaborative experience. From Sham, who wrote the book, to the people who did the post production, to the people who did the posters, and in between were, the actors, the cinematographer, the editor, Howard Shaw. I mean, Sting, who gave us his song for I think $400 or something ridiculous like that because he loved the scene so much. It was magical. I mean, David was fabulous, my producer, and he said, "No, we're not going to work more than 8 hours a day," and that's it. So because it was about performance and driven, and
Mhm.
also it was a very sensitive subject. So,
Yeah.
the Sinhalese who were playing Tamils were very very emotional about what they had to go through, because it actually gave them an insight or a window into they what they had no clue about what 20
Yeah.
years ago Tamils had gone through. So it was a very emotional and a very wonderful set. We all still are in touch with each other, and Agam is doing a film in Vancouver, and Ali is doing another film, and Nimi's doing something else in Sri Lanka. It's really good people, good
That's
people.
great.
Well, thank you both so much, Ann Marie MacDonald and Deepa Mehta, for taking the time to talk about your film and to be part of Canadian Film Forum. Once again, Deepa, you've been a stalwart. I don't know how many of your films now we've shown, but we want to keep doing it. And Ann Marie, it was a delight to have you here.
The next time it's going to be with Anne Marie's book, Fall on Your Knees. Here,
Okay, all right. Well, again,
has to be.
yeah,
I'm going to be bugging her every day. You're a witness to that.
I am. You heard it here. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And speaking of the village that it takes to put together a production, I want to thank Max Hazen, Rola Tahir, Jimmy Vuong, Francisca, whose last name I will butcher, but Wiafa Amoko, and Hannah Fleisch, and of course, my always silent partner in crime, James Cahill. And I want to just alert our viewers to our next event, which is a panel discussion on post-COVID Toronto, Building Back Better. We'll have Toronto City Planner Greg Lintern, Kofi Hope, Cherise Berta, and Steve DeVoe. And if you're wondering, and moderator Rahul Bardwaj. And if you're wondering, what do all those people have in common, aside from being so central to city building? They're all Ennis alumni, Deepa. How about that?
Are they? Wow.
Yeah. So,
amazing. Yeah, that's great.
So join us for that. And then there'll be another event coming up in May, some others as well, but one in May that I can preview for you, which is a screening event tied to Picture a Scientist, which is a documentary about the problems that female scientists face within academia. We'll have an all-star panel of female scientists, as you might predict. So thanks everyone for coming. Thanks again to Deepa and Ann Marie, and good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anne Marie. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, all you wonderful people who I can see. And thank you for making it possible. Thank you, Francisca, again. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Bye. Bye,
Deepa.
Charlie. Take
Charlie.
care.